So as a continuation of our video on basics of configuration, right, we're going to be looking at administrative configurations next. So we're going to be talking about what administrative configurations are and how to, do these administrative configurations on network devices, right? Because they are really, really critical. So my name is Kenneth and let's get started. What are administrative configurations, right? So administrative configurations are configurations that we would typically do on devices, on network devices and platforms to ensure that things like users, permissions, and that the device is securely being accessed, right? So I've put a note on my other screen. I'll just read out a couple of them. So administrative configurations basically in Cisco and in any other platform helps you essentially to ensure that you manage, monitor, secure and maintain your devices, right? Like routers and switches. These configurations do not directly affect traffic and how traffic is transmitted on the device, but it ensures that your device is securely accessed, that your device is also being managed and monitored properly. So some of the basic configurations that you would typically find in administrative setups include things like hostname, banner messages, service passwords and secrets, console management and VTY passwords, service timestamps, AAA, multi-factor authentication, backup and restore. For the administrative configuration, I'm going to be using two different devices so that we'll see that administrative configurations are the same across devices. Where you find the various settings and how you find them, be it on GUI or CLI, might be a bit different, but the settings are always the same. So first of all, I would use my Cisco router, my 1900 series router that I always use. That's the first one we'll be making use of to configure administrative settings on CLI. And then secondly, we're going to make use of my my Sophos firewall, my XG210 firewall, right? So we're going to be using this as well to configure administrative settings on GUI to see how that looks and feels, right? This is my terminal. Now I've already logged into my router and you can see that I've entered my username and password. So I would enable and go into the privilege mode to execute. I'll go into configuration mode. Right, now we're in configuration mode. Now to configure the hostname. Hostname tells you what the name of the device is. So hostname, let's change it from router. Let's change it to router 2, right? So we can name our host, we can change the host name, right? As you can see from router 1 to router 2 to define, what that device should be doing or what location that device is or whatever it is. There are so many ways to go around nomenclature when it comes to hostname. That would usually depend on how your environment is set up and what you're trying to achieve. The next one is banner messages. So banner messages are kind of like disclaimers or informational notes that tells whoever is logging in what they are supposed to know. This could be it could be disclaimers, it could be policy information, it could be information to hackers and people trying to pen test your network. So to do this, we'll do banner MOTD, message of the day, and then would add what we call a delimiter, right? You can basically use anything as the delimiter, right? Just ensure that you use it before and after your message. So would say no on author, right? Am I spelling it correctly? Unauthorized, yeah, access allowed, right? So if we press enter, that is our banner message, right? So if we exit again, right, and we try to log in and we enter our username and we enter our password, enable, we already see no authorized access allowed. This is spelled wrongly, obviously, so I need to change that access, the spelling, but yeah, you get the idea, right? So you can put your disclaimer messages here to ensure that anyone trying to log in sees this message and know what information you're trying to communicate. Now let's go back to the configuration terminal, right? So by the time we get back in here, the next thing we're going to be looking at is service passwords and secrets and things like this. So to configure service password, we have we can do enable secret, right? Enable secret, and then you put in whatever the secret password is that you're trying to use. So you could, let's say, enable secret Cisco. I won't be saving this configuration, right? So it will be erasing once I'm done. So enable secret Cisco, and then what other configuration are we having? We will also try to encrypt the service passwords. Any password that we've entered, you can do that by entering service password encryption, right? This encrypts your passwords that you have entered on your device. So the next one would be we've done enable password, we've done secrets. Next one will be console management and VTY passwords. So to configure your various lines, be it your console, your VTY lines, or what other lines are there, yeah, I think that's about the two. We'll do line con 0, so that's the console line on the device, and then we would do password, right? Would enter whatever password it is that we want to use, let's say Cisco, and then we'll do we can use the login, right, to ensure that people get to enter that password when they are trying to access the device. And then another one is VTY lines. Now for VTY lines, you would want to enter the VTY lines that you want to modify, right? Line VTY, I'll have to exit from here, right, and then enter line VTY 0 to 4, right? This would affect obviously 5 virtual lines, right? So 0, 1, 2, 4. So would say password Cisco, right, login, and then we want to put the transport mode that we want to use. Typically would be transport input SSH, right, to ensure that we are entering only through SSH and not telnet, right? So that's for VTY. So the next configuration that we're going to be doing is called service timestamps, right? So the one we have here, service timestamps, when events are logged on your device, service timestamp appends the correct time that is human readable, so that you can effectively know when that event occurred, right? So to do the configuration for service timestamps, I've already entered the configuration. It's one of those configurations you don't use frequently. So to do service timestamps, this is the configuration, right? So you have the service timestamps telling you to timestamp the events for for events that are logged, right? So it's going to append the date time, right? Date and time together, and it's going to put the millisecond as well that the event occurred. Next thing is going to use local time. It's going to append the local time, and then it's going to append the time zone in which that you are, or that the device is in, right? So if an event occurs, all of this information is going to be populated. Another one is the debug, right? So if we entered debug messages when you're trying to debug a problem on your device, and you use the debug keyword, it's going to append the date time as well, local time, and the show time zone, and all of that to your command. So that's for service time stamps. All right. Now the next thing we're supposed to look at is AAA, right? AAA is for authentication and authorization and accounting. I don't have a AAA server setup, so we're going to be doing a much more robust video or tutorial for how to set up AAA, right? So, but for AAA essentially helps you authenticate users who are trying to manage your device or trying to gain access to some resource in your environment. So that's what AAA basically is about. And how you would use the AAA service is by using the keyword AAA new model, right? AAA new model, I think it's hyphenated, AAA new model, right? This is how to introduce your AAA and to get it running on your system. So for the AAA authentication, if you're trying to authenticate users via your AAA, you typically do AAA authentication, right? Login, right? Default. And then when you've said that you want to log in via default, you have to also specify the group, right? If you have like a reduce server, a TACAC server, setup, then you'd have to specify the group that you have set up within that radius or that TACAC server. So the next thing is to specify that you're using your radius group and then local. So typically this configuration would ensure that users are authenticated via AAA, and then it's going to affect everywhere you've used your login keyword, which could be your VTY line or your console, and also it's going to use your radius group, and it's also going to fall back to local, that is usernames and passwords that you've created locally on your device if the radius server is not available. So that's it for AAA authentication. We're going to do another tutorial where we would show this actually in operation and how it works. Now 2FA and MFA, I'm not going to be doing that because I don't have an duos or an authentication server or service setup that I can use to authenticate to, right? Using 2FA or MFA. So we're going to go to backup and restore, right? Backup and restore is pretty much straightforward, and I've done this in one of my other videos. So typically you would want to do exit, right, and do copy, run TFTP if you're backing up to a TFTP server, or if you're backing up to whatever server there is. So right, so if you do a question mark here, you'll be able to find other places that you can back up to, and other things that you can do, right? You can back up to FTP, TFTP. I think there's an option for SCP as well, secure copy, right? So you can use any of these as backup. When you've completed this command, it's going to ask you for the destination or backup server IP address, and then you're going to enter all of that information, and it's going to back up to that destination automatically, right? So that's it about running. These are not all the administrative commands that you can perform, but these are the basics that you'd find on every device. Now we'll be doing this on our second device, which is my XG210. So we'll navigate to the web console and log in there to see how we can get all these done. All right. Yeah, I'll move this to my other screen so that I can easily know what I'm doing next. Admin, and then my pretty easy password. So I've logged into my Sophos firewall here. I've really not done anything much aside from set up internet connection and configure a few interfaces, right? So to do these configurations, first we're going to do the hostname bit. So to configure host names, here we're going to be using GUI. So we'll go to navigate to administration, right, and go to this section called admin and user settings, right? When you go to admin and user settings, you'll find information about your host. So you have the host description, and then you have the host name, right? So here you can modify the host name and apply. So this should be specific to the function or the location of your device, right? So you could say GW, FW, gateway, firewall, floor 2, or something like that. So it's completely up to you. So that's about this. Now next one is banner messages. So for banner messages, I think it's found in administration as well, and then you scroll, let's see, device access. You scroll down all the way to please pardon me, it's for banner messages, there's somewhere you find notification settings, SNMP, is it messages? Yes, for banner messages is actually in messages, right? So you find all the messages you want here, right? So we'll go to administration messages, and you see them. This is a private computer system. Unauthorized access, use is prohibited, and only authorized users are permitted. So you can add more information here by editing it, and then that's basically for that. So but to turn it on, you go to a different location entirely. So you go to administration, right, and you go to device access, I think, admin settings, okay, yes, disclaimers. So you have to enable disclaimers here for it to display. So, and then you can click to modify any one of the disclaimers that you want to modify, right? So that's basically it. So you turn it on in admin and user settings, and then you navigate to messages to make modifications to suit what it is you're trying to communicate. Now the next thing we're going to be taking a look at is service passwords and secrets. Now service passwords are usually not used here. They are just called, passwords, right? So if we go to device access, you'll find the default admin passwords, and you find the settings, right? So you can configure this and change the username and password for the admin. Now you can also add admin and users by going to admin and user settings and no, not admin and user settings. I think it's authentication, by going to authentication and creating users. So when you create users, it's going to ask you for what kind of user this is. So you're going to say administrator, and you're going to choose the type of administrator that you're trying to. So it's quite different from device to device, but administrative settings are usually basically the same thing, right? Now, the next thing we're going to be looking at, we've taken a look at service passwords, and then another one is console management and VTY passwords. So console management and VTY password. So we've already taken a look at passwords. So for console, the console password is the same thing as the administrator password, right? So it's the same thing as the user password, is the same thing as the UI password. So when you go to administration and you go to device access, the password, whatever password, username and password that you have here, is the same thing that you use to log into the console, is the same thing that you use to log into the web interface, right? So that's basically for console passwords and all of that. So if we go to administration and go to device access, right, we would see that we have administrative services right here, right on this side, administrative service, and we see that on the LAN we've enabled HTTP and SSH, HTTPS and SSH, right? So we've enabled these two. That means we can access HTTPS and SSH through the LAN, right? So that's for management and console, right? So we can access all of this through the LAN, HTTPS and SSH. Now the next thing we are going to look at is service timestamps. If we go to system and administration, right? If we go to administration and go to time, right, so we will see where we can set up our time zone and all of that, which would help our events be logged correctly, right? So we can set up the time zone to suit your location, and configure your NTP server if you have one set up, and all these settings which would help your events and debugging messages to be stored correctly. Now the next thing we are going to be looking at is AAA. For AAA, if we go to authentication and go to servers, right, here we can set up AAA servers that we already have running somewhere. We can add them, right? So if we click on add, you can set up how you want to authenticate. So it has quite a number of options: LDAP server, Active Directory, Radius, StackAx, eDirectory, Azure AD, single sign-on. So it would require for the name of the server and then the IP of the server, and then it's going to require for the port you're using and all this information that you need to provide to connect to your server, that is your authentication server, be it TACAX or Radius or whatever type of server that is. So that's for AAA. For authentication, we would typically have authentication service. Give me a minute. Yeah, multi-factor authentication. So you can turn it on here, and then when the user logs in for the first time or tries to log in again, be it on their VPN portal or the web admin console, it's going to ask them to generate authentication tokens, right? So this would use a QR code to set up an authentication system, be it to their email or to an authentication app that they have on their device. So it's going to use the authentication service to authenticate them on the device each time they try to log in. Now we have backup and restoration. As you can already see, it's pretty much straightforward here. You can back up to locally, you can back up to an FTP server, and you can back up to email, and you can set this up, right, automate it as frequently, daily, monthly, and it would run how you've set it up to run. So that's basically for administrative configuration and administrative settings. This video is already too long. If I turn on any other device I have here, be it my Juniper device or FortiGate, you see that pretty much it's the same thing across devices, right? So where you find the settings might be a bit different, but the nomenclature and the attributes that you're going to find, that is the individual settings, the tweaks that you have to do, they are basically the same thing across devices, right? So thank you so much for watching. If these videos make sense to you, please do like, subscribe, repost, and consider subscribing to my channel so that you get the notification once I upload any new content, right? Thank you so much, and see you on the next one.